Go. Right, good evening. We'll make a start. I'm just going to try and find where we all are because we've seemed to have fallen off the screen. So just we can see everybody now. Welcome to episode 66 of the Malt Travail podcast. And I need to want to know. We were, to be honest with you, it's my fault. I was trying to think of something we could do. We've got quite a bit of pub crawling that we still haven't caught up on. I think the last time we managed to do Nick and Bruce's pre-Christmas sessions. I've got a set of slides ready for Christmas beers, but it feels a long time ago as we're pretty much in March this week, aren't we? So a little bit inspired by, actually, for the first time in quite a while, we all managed to sit in a pub. In fact, two pubs for a bit of Saturday, and I spent a bit longer certainly with Bruce. And we're planning to do it again pretty soon. So inspired by our little
mull soil.
Yeah, we'll come back on the mull soil shortly. But inspired by our little journey into, I must admit, a bit of North Yorkshire that I've rarely been into, and it did feel like stepping back several hundred years. I thought we'd and it's that kind of, well, I don't know, it's just getting later tonight. It was only 6 o'clock and it was still nearly late. But do all good pubs need a fire? You'll notice that Bruce often lyrics on, whatever the word is, warmingly and glowingly about fires in pubs. So I did think this, and actually having a quick delve into the world of Tinternet, it's amazing actually how many, pubs with fires are quite a popular search, and there's Dorset pubs, there's Devon pubs, there's Peak District pubs. I didn't notice that's in London. There's a massive thing in London about which pubs have got fires. I guess in London because most people don't have access. I mean, I've got
a fire now, aren't they?
Yeah, sat behind me here. So that's the plan. We're going to have a little bit of a talk about good pubs, or do pubs make fires. We'll do our normal beery catch-ups and a bit of beer news. And also, hopefully, we'll talk a little bit about our plans.
Do pubs make fires?
Well, I didn't worry about that, because when you put it on the internet, you tend to get you get the cooking house on fire. Yeah. And several other ones, and one or two to me local that mysteriously set fire and then were reborn again with the same people in charge. Anyway, we better not go in there because we're already close to several litigations from various brewery owners, etc. So how are we, gents? I say it doesn't feel that long. We were all sat in the Volunteer Arms in York and Crystal Palace.
Strange times. It's strange being a podcaster now that after Donald Trump's appointment of a podcast as the deputy of the FBI, obviously we're becoming influential figures, aren't we? They're insane.
Well, you say that.
In a podcast, I was the deputy in charge of the FBI.
You say that, Bruce, and we've mentioned it on numerous podcasts. We kind of throw an idea up, and then it's all over the national papers. And I didn't know. You sent me the link, actually, in the Yorkshire Evening Press this week. Guess what they were doing? Pubs with fires. The Evening Press, or York Press, sorry. The York Press. I've got to say, I'll go through their list. It was a really, not as always, it was a really poor article, and ended up naming 4 random pubs in York. And there must be loads of pubs in York that have fires. Anyway, we'll come on to that. Just one bit of pub news, because we've got quite a lot of catch-up drinking to talk about. Interestingly, that again, whilst we've talked about maybe some positives, and obviously the budget tried to be positive about pubs, the actual figures, and I'm just reflecting on that, again, being back up in Malton, when I think, Nick, there are probably more pubs closed than are open now in Malton, aren't there, at the moment? And certainly, and when I know Bruce, you and I were out and about in York's environs. Again, it's very similar in villages, and I think it feels like it's starting to bite now. I think people managed to maybe survive through. It wasn't a great summer, I guess, so people went to the pub a little bit. Obviously, there was the usual Christmas rush, but it does say, and so the couple of headlines here. There's 100 fewer breweries now in the UK than there was a year ago in January 2023. And similarly, at the moment, around about 6 pubs a week are shutting down every week. And that certainly seems to be the case across the country, really. Some people are getting it right, and again, I've got to say, we mentioned it here, the last few nights I've been out, certainly later on, a couple of nights I've been out later on in towns, it's been absolutely dead. It's been really, really dead in good pubs. And I think there's quite a few of them are quite worried. And are just barely making it. But yeah, I mean, I think in Malton, it doesn't seem to be much hope now with, like I said, I mean, literally, I know I wouldn't say you scrape. Well, interesting, I've just seen somebody in Malton Moan saying they want to go for a meal with, I think, brothers come up today and they're trying to go out for a meal, and there's obviously nowhere in Malton open. Everywhere's shut because it's Monday night.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
No, I think the problem in Malton is it's compounded by the fact that what you call a traditional pub building, they are money pits now. You know, to keep the infrastructure up to a certain state, you've got to put a lot of money in. And obviously the problem in Malton is all these buildings, most people who could probably run a pub successfully don't want to come into Malton because ultimately they're putting money into somebody else's building. Because the way the estate work, basically the tenant is responsible for repairs and renewals. And it's noticeable, I think, in a lot of places now that it's the traditional pubs that are closing, and yet which premises seem to be full. It's your microbars, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, it's people using all retail shops, and some microbars I don't mind, some I don't think it's not a pub. But at the same time, it's a lot cheaper to run, whether it be from utilities, whether it be powering, heating, you know, a smaller building when you aren't busy. And then it also gives that air of, even if it's a smaller building, even if you've only got like half a dozen people in, it actually gives you a bit of atmosphere. Whereas you can walk into some big old traditional pubs, there might be 6 people in, but you walk in and think this spot's completely empty and deserted, you know, and there's no atmosphere. You walk out, you go somewhere else. So I think that's one of the issues now, you know, those people that are buying retail units and turning them to the microbars are being successful. But sadly, that's at the cost of what you would call your traditional pubs that were being built, you know.
Yeah, but again,
100 years ago.
The trouble as well is that, I mean, obviously in April, we've got all the new costs to employees with national insurance and tax. And then added to that, the fact that with what's going on in the world now, and look like it's going to be almost an insistence this week, we're going to be forced to push up the defence budget by hundreds of billions of pounds. There'll be increased income tax and public spending cuts. It's all heading for a perfect storm. I know I read out to the Telegraph the other day, and they're saying that, you know, hospitality's just going to be facing a tsunami, job losses possibly. They may get through the summer, but come autumn, and I must admit, like you, we're here in York, probably the third biggest tourist hotspot in the country, and it's insane how quiet some of these pubs are on a night now, and it's one of the suburbs.
And that's a good point. I think you both made there. That obviously microbars very much so a one man and one woman shows, aren't they? You know, they you know, if they have got any staff in them, they're normally kind of related, or one person pretty much runs the place all week. But interestingly, beer festivals seem to be booming. I mean, again, every week on our camera page here, we've got every cricket club in the area's had a beer festival, and I suppose to them it's great because it gives them £1,000 or so to pay their insurance over the winter and their bills and things. But you know, and I wonder whether again it's that range of beers. You know, often with the traditional boozer, you're pretty much limited to kind of your tie, or even not your tie, but who you deal with. And you pretty much, you know, you have the same macro kind of offer. Whereas micros, you know, you never find Doom Bar or Abbott ALD in a micro bar, and I wonder whether that's part of it as well. But it's interesting time. So, as I said, we've got quite a lot to catch up on. So, a couple of weekends ago, the start of what was a kind of half term, certainly for most of the country, we set up to Yorkshire, and again, because of family shift patterns, me and son said we'd come on the train. So we set off and we met with Bruce and our little chauffeur for the day, David, who took us on a magical mystery tour of what I've kind of tried to name it. I guess it's the kind of the hidden corner of North Yorkshire. So we're talking about the kind of the A64, aren't we? East of the A64. Towards Selby, with Tadcaster at the kind of the bottom of it, and then the Southern York bit there. And even if you look, I mean, you look at the names of the villages. You've got Cotmanthorpe, that's a Viking name. Acaster Malbis, which apparently is Saxon. Appleton Roebuck, which again is a Saxon name. Nun Appleton, because there was a nunnery there in the 14th century. I'm going to tell you something about Nun Appleton in a minute. I didn't know. Bolton Percy, Ullerskelf, which again is very much a Viking name. Church Fenton. So it's a bit like a history book, isn't it? It very much is. The history of the British Isles, and not forgetting Towton, of course, which was the site of the biggest War of the Roses, very bloody War of the Roses. So absolutely covered in history, and very much a Sam Smith's. Well, I guess in the past, next door area, virtually every village pub is a Sam Smith pub, or was a Sam Smith pub. At the moment, probably again half of those villages have got pubs open, and half of them haven't. So it was certainly interesting.
You should copyright that name. That's a great name, the Domesday Triangle.
Well, when I started reading into it, but all of those villages were Domesday villages. Yeah. They were all there, and it's Viking, then it's Saxon. Sorry, Roman. There's some Roman as well. I remember Acaster. Well, that's right. Sorry, Acaster Malbis. Acaster is Roman for fort. So there was a fort there, a Roman fort there. So you've got the whole history of Britain up to certainly the War of the Roses and beyond. So very, very interesting. So yes, Nun Appleton I think now it's about 16th century manor that's there. It was quite famous for a while. A guy from Bradford, a big mill owner, bought it in the 1800s and did it up. And apparently it used to be a fantastic place. And then it was it fell through and it had to be sold off for inheritance tax, etc. And now it's there in a slight air of decay. Do you know who owns Appleton? Sorry, Nun Appleton Manor these days?
No.
Certain brewery owner who doesn't live that far away. So apparently, in 1980 something, yes, Mr. Smith bought this property as an investment. And then promptly did nothing with it for 20 years. However, I do read in the local parish news that there have been workmen, etc., sighted, and there's fencing gone up. And he fenced it all off. He closed bridleways that had been used for centuries through the village. So yes, watch that space. So yeah, I wasn't aware of that. But yes, Mr. Smith owns what is now Nun Appleton. I think it's called Grange Hall or something. So very interesting.
That Guardian article. I didn't realise it was there though.
Yeah. So we said that's not his house. That's not where he lives. It's just another stately home that he owns in the portfolio. So anyway, we set off and with a slight false start because we got all the way to Appleton Roebuck and found that the Roebuck of Appleton Roebuck was actually shut. It was about 1 o'clock, and the landlady actually was out the back. And so Bruce did say, and she said, "No, come back at 2 o'clock." So rather than saying, "Come in, lads, come on, you might as well have a drink, and I might as well make 12 quid out of you." No, it was no, we're definitely shut. So come back at 2 o'clock. So we then headed off then to to Saxton, which again is a Saxon village, very very quaint little village, into what is a very ancient pub. I think this is a 13th century building, and it's the Greyhound. Have you ever been to this one, Nick? Has Bruce managed to entice you out to the Greyhound?
I don't think so. No.
The day we went, Nick, we leave you with us. The kids weren't allowed inside. You've been outside.
Oh, that's right, that was another wasted trip to a pub that Bruce knew very well. And until we got there, we suddenly found out that children weren't allowed there, even though Bruce had been there hundreds of times. No, we didn't have a drink outside because it was rammed. We got back in the car and travelled off again. So we didn't have a drink there.
And I read on TripAdvisor, despite being called the Greyhound Inn, they also don't let dogs anywhere near it either, which is surprising because it's very much a village pub, quite different in that it's perpendicular to the road. And again, it wasn't a pub initially; it was a farmhouse with a barn, and therefore it's kind of length on to the road, which is quite interesting. But that again, be on YouTube, creates a very nice little courtyard there. And again, there's a very very stunning church, All Saints, which is grade 1 listed, which I think is the highest you can get in the village. A massive church for the area. So this is very, very old-fashioned, I say, farmhousey type place. A minute bar, far end. 3 rooms. The middle room is the posh room. Think red velvet. We were instructed, having walked into the bar, we were instructed we could not go into the middle room So the bar was full of locals. There was a landlady behind the bar, probably about 4 or 5 locals sat at that end, and we were given strict instructions that we could not go in the middle room because I was wearing walking shoes. Well, I guess they're kind of hardy trainers. We'd walked from the road outside the pub. That's as far as we'd walked. But anyway, we duly kind of scuttled down to the bottom room, which had a blazing fire, because the theme of today. A few of the locals in there as well. And again, I think I'm not, as you've probably heard before, I'm not a massive fan of Old Brewery Bitter, but Bruce persuaded me, and I've got to say, it's probably the best pint of Old Brewery Bitter I've had in, I would say, 30 years. It was really, really good. Despite reading this pub's not had a cellar. I think 1990 was the first time it actually had a cellar. It used to be very famous for having the barrels behind the bar. But anyway, they put a cellar in, and whatever they're doing, they're keeping fantastic beer. So it was quite nice. It was a pretty horrible damp Saturday, so it was quite nice. We're in the room, again, if you're on YouTube, the top pub there nearest to the kind of front of the picture. There was a lovely blazing fire, wasn't there, Bruce? Usual warnings about, digital use of phones and everything. You'll be castrated and sent away, and children and dogs cannot pass over the front step. But then again,
the front bar, as it created, is absolutely stunning, isn't it? Because you've got a very old-fashioned bar. Then, right next to it, there's a mantelpiece with another roaring fire and a bench seat for about 3 people. One in the window. They can sit right over it. Sadly, because you can't take photographs of this Hamstead pub.
No, and there isn't no photo. I couldn't find any photos at all of it. I found an ancient one from Cadcaster Archaeological Society, which all covered in ivy, and it's got outdoor loos, just add to the kind of the oldie worldy vibe. And there's in the picture there at the bottom of YouTube, that's the ladies' loo with the church peeking over the top. So it was a nice start to the day. We then headed off back up to Appleton Roebuck. Thankfully, it was 2:00 now, so we did get into the Roebuck. And this pub only opens now Thursdays till Sundays. Again, it was closed for quite a while after COVID. Thankfully, it's been reopened. Bruce was in ecstasy because there were 3 fires in this. I don't think they were all lit, were they? But there were 3 separate fires. Lit. Oh, well, they're all lit. Yeah, they're all lit. I mean, the money that was spent on coal and bloody thing. We managed to sit in the. It's a bit of a pokey kind of. I wouldn't say it's a back room. It is actually kind of almost like open plan, isn't it, inside? Although again, it's kind of it's a traditional pub. Though there is a stunning fire range, though, isn't there? Again, I think the Seahorse has got a similar range. And actually, it was Mart York, wasn't it? It was a York Ironmongers that had built it. And that was roaring away. So unfortunately, because it only opens for a few days a week, they don't do any cask beer. So it was only keg. But again, it was drinkable, wasn't it, Bruce?
Yeah. And I say it's a shame they don't have the cask on, but it is that Yorkshire range. It must be one of the finest pub fights in the country, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. So we sat in there, and I say what really thrilled our driver David was on arrival in the back car park for the second time. He noticed lots of molehills, and then with some kind of glee, ran out of the car with shovel and bag in hand, and left us in the pub while he was shoveling molehill soil into several bags to put in the back of his car. The car, which also had a guard of gherkins in it, which he seemed to take anywhere with him as well. But we can't mock, and he was a good sport on the day. And then it was back to York, and it was time to meet Nick because Nick had come through a little bit later. Again, a slightly staggered wait for Nick because we were slightly behind time because of our first one being shut. So I know Nick managed to sneak into Wetherspoons to get his daily fix, and then we met up at the Crystal Palace.
I walked to the Crystal Palace first. Walked in there. It was like a mortuary waiting room. There was like about 3 single blokes and a couple all sat around the edge of the big lounge, all staring at the beers. No talk, no conversation. Obviously, in Sam Smith's pub, no background music, no television with the racing on. I didn't actually have anything to read other than my phone, and I thought, well, I can't pull my phone out. And then I was updated on your ETA that was going to be another 20 minutes. So I popped back to the punch bowl. Had a nice pint of Acorn Brewery, Yorkshire Pride, that was £2.78 minus me 50p. So I had a pint of that and it's got back to Crystal Palace. Just going back to Sam Smith's pubs as well. Last time I was in Nellie's in Beverley talking about taking photographs and you're not allowed to. I mean, it's so short-sighted because you go in Nellie's and there's a corner there in the main bar at the back that has all these wonderful old historic photographs of all the old boys that used to drink in there. And it's all nostalgic. And, you know, Mr. Smith himself must have okayed that. And he likes that nostalgia and he likes looking back to the 40s and 50s. But by not letting people take photographs in his pubs, he's lost the history of his pubs for about the last, 15, 20 years. And in another 20 or 30 years, you know, you've got no photographic record of what the pubs were like inside because he's got this short-sighted thing that
I assume you could take a camera in and take photos. It doesn't mention cameras.
You can take like a proper Polaroid camera, Olympus camera. You're allowed to take pictures.
Maybe that's what we need to do.
But who has a Polaroid camera nowadays? It's all on your phone, isn't it? You know, and he, you know, he's a chap that embraces his story, which is what we like about the pubs in a certain respect. But you know, all this social history is being lost.
Yeah, you're right.
People can't record it on what is the modern camera, which is a phone or even a GoPro or even, you know, any sort of recording stuff. I mean, I know numerous people have put complaints on TripAdvisors, reckoning that all they're doing is sitting in the pub looking at the photographs on the phone, and they've been told by the staff, oh, no, you have to put your phone away. But I'm not ringing anybody. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just looking at photographs. No, you can't do that anyway. You've got to put it away. You've got to leave, sort of thing. So I don't know.
I've also seen
seems short-sighted.
I've seen somewhere the pub won't even let you use your phone to pay for your beer in some pubs. I mean, that might be the final straw. I mean, again, the Crystal Palace is interesting, isn't it? Because Crystal Palace is, again, one of Bruce's regular haunts. Again, if you're on YouTube, it doesn't look like a pub. And I think I put in my blog that you can walk past it sometimes, also get it. There's no real outdoor signage. I do notice that this newer landlady, who again has got kind of earrings and red hair, which again I did wonder if Humphrey turns up one day. She has got I wouldn't say glary, but a in-your-face sign that she puts out on the road, hasn't she? I think they had twinkling lights around it when we were there last week, and I do wonder whether that fits within the
Because, of course, we've got 4 hotels and a hostel on the Holgate Road.
Yeah.
So as people walk down, and actually it does draw people in. It's the fire that draws them in. Keep the theme of this. You get talking to people like, oh, just the Holgate Hill Hotel, and we thought, oh, real fire.
I just say that, on the side,
They can't believe the prices, and end up paying, and you see me on the following day. So it does kind of work, that sign.
So, but they had no beer on that day.
They had no beer on. No
beer.
Yeah,
no beer. How does that?
Well, she only gets one cask a week now, and I think on Tuesday, if she gets an unexpected busy night, it goes. So
it goes. Yeah.
She's talking wastage and selling it.
And it's worth a visit. This pub. It is a pub of 2 halves. There's a rear bar, which is very much a rear bar, and I think there must be the same folk in there. And I think again, we have been in there, but you do get it is a bit like the slaughtered lamb in there when you walk in. And then the other side, I reckon.
Is it a snooker table or a pool table there?
Pool table, isn't it? Yeah.
Pool. Yeah.
And then on the other side,
big enough for a snooker table, though, isn't it?
It would have been, yeah. Probably had a snooker table in the go. And then the other side, I reckon, is more like a gentleman's club than a lounge. I said the lounge, but it's actually like a gentleman's club. It's all kind of leather settees, isn't it? And banquettes and another roaring fire. So anyway, all good. We then went again a new one, I think, for both me and Nick. And again, I know Bruce, you're a regular here, which is the Volunteer Arms, which doesn't get a lot of headlines really in York, despite being a really cracking pub. And actually, when you read the reviews, everybody says it's worth going. It's 5 minutes, if that, from the Crystal Palace over the metal bridge, which again, most people, if you've been to York, you'll probably recognise the Iron Bridge. East Coast, and again, a massive range of Yorkshire beers. It's interesting inside. Again, it's lots of red velvet. It's quite dark, wasn't it? That's what a lot of reviews say. But definitely worth just finding it out down that side street, just of Holgate. So definitely, and we had a couple of nice pints in there. At that point, we left Bruce, and so we headed back into town. So I think we had about an hour and a half, didn't we? And we'd been to York not that long ago. So our old faithful, of course, is going to the Acorn, and so we headed to the Acorn off Micklegate there. And I think up those, and again, if you're on YouTube, there's Nick just striding up the cobbles, and it does always feel like you're going back 100 years. And I've got to say that pub will not worry, because that pub was absolutely rammed. And every time I've been in that pub, it's been rammed. That pub on Saturday about 3 o'clock, Nick, won it. There wasn't a seat. We got the last seat, and it was ticking over.
But it's
tables full of glasses.
It's local and it's regular, so because it's tucked away off Micklegate, you don't get all the idiots in there. You don't get all the stag and hens in there. So yeah, and Dave, who's the bar manager in there now, knows how to keep a good beer. So it's always safe. Safe one is that when the ack on.
And then we headed back into town, and again we went a bit macro. We went to Hackers for a quick Nicholson's refill, and then it ended up at York Tap as always, awaiting the train. So again, quite an interesting Saturday, a bit of a different Saturday out. Bruce, quickly tell us. Yeah, you've been on your normal all the way around the country. So I'm going to make you just limit you to two. One is that you've been to the Rhubarb Festival in Wakefield, the annual one.
It's a Wakefield. Yeah, if you've ever wondered what happens to all the chalets, all across the country, all those Christmas markets, and think, what happens to all those chalets when they finish? They come out and give the Rhubarb Festival. So Wakefield's literally got hundreds of these chalets accommodating every food you can eat under the premise of the Rhubarb Festival. To be fair, there's not a lot of rhubarb. There are a couple of people dressed as rhubarb walking about, and many of the stalls are joining with rhubarb-orientated stuff. But yeah, it's a bit of a very popular day. I believe on a Saturday it turns into a massive drinking day, but it's basically a Christmas market without Christmas stuff, just all the stalls and quite some heavily rhubarb stuff. But I mean, the good news is that they did have a rhubarb bar at the festival, and then we had to choose a couple of us to go to, so we ended up to Fernandez, Louis' bar at Fernandez Brewery. And I must admit, if I'd not been before and I was following Google Maps, you would think, this can't be right. This cannot be right. It's a stunning building, but it's tucked away down an exceedingly dodgy alley in a pretty sketchy part of town. Thankfully, now there's a direct train from York to the Kirkgate station. But I mean, me and Nick have been, it's quite a stunning place, isn't it, Nick? It was renovated in 2019. And obviously, Ossett put a ton of money into it. It's full of old pub signs, pub lanterns that you was hanging above the door, branded, the vast range of beers on. Incredibly well kept beer.
But I mean, it's there because it's been a warehouse, hasn't it, Bruce? And I think that was where the original brewery was, and not the Fernandez brewery, but even before that, it's been going a good few years. So that's why it's in like a inner city industrial estate, as it were. In there, like you say, in a yard. Yeah.
Fast food shops. But having said that, I mean, again, they had they'd put a rhubarb beer on the festival. But if you do go to Wakefield, I say. You're going to think, I've got this wrong. This place cannot be down here. But you trust Google Maps. It's a stunning place. And then I had to go down to London a few days before that. My son was doing an interview. I met him in the Red Line. Nick and Michael Beanie told me about this. And this was the third time I've tried to find it. Mm-hmm. A bit more time this time and nobody else to worry about by myself. So I did eventually find it. It was remarkably easy. It's essentially at the back of Fort Mimosas, isn't it? Fantastic.
York Street, I think it is.
It is, yeah. That's right, yeah. Just a sort of Regency pub inside. Tiny pub for central London. A couple of button leather sofas that wrap around a couple of tables in the front bar, some banquettes, loads of fantastic glass, chandeliers, and a tiny back room. Then some incredibly steep sorts of the loo. I mean, when I got in there at 2:00, it was very, very quiet. But then all of a sudden at 4:00, it just filled up. It was popular. But yeah, absolutely stunning pub, the Red Lion.
It's
great.
It's literally completely lined by etched mirrors.
It is stunning.
Yeah, so not quite floor to ceiling, but at least ceiling down to sort of waist height etched mirrors. They reckon it was very popular with the prostitutes in the Victorian time, which is one of the reasons why they supported had all these mirrors to basically. Not if somebody walked in, somebody could catch an eye of somebody else before they saw them, sort of thing, and stuff like that. It's one of those little hidden gems that is worth looking out. Typical Fuller's Fare in it, Bruce. Typical Central London prices, but
yeah, it's all getting rather ridiculous down there, pricing, isn't it? I mean,
so
5 pints. And you come back, two of you, about 5 pints, two of you have spent £35. It's all getting a little bit insane down there, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's £6 the average pint now in London. It's £5 now UK, and it's £6 something in London. It was in one of the papers last week. So just a Rhubarb Triangle bit, just to explain that again for people not au fait with that. There is this place called the Rhubarb Triangle, which is kind of Castleford, Wakefield, isn't it? That kind of area there. It's about 9 square miles. And rhubarb actually is Siberian. It came from Russia, actually. And I do wonder whether there was something there about porter and stuff going imperial style, and maybe it coming back in the ships as a ballast on the way back. And for some whatever reason, this particular part of Yorkshire became renowned for it, and particularly the festival is celebrating the forced rhubarb. So this is the rhubarb that's grown in the dark, and is forced to come early. And therefore it's supposed to be very sweet and very tender, and of course it's a bit like the grouse.
It was delicious, absolutely delicious.
And of course it sits on the East Coast main line. So the idea was that this was the freshest rhubarb to get to London in a couple of hours, and therefore it became a bit like the grouse on the 12th and stuff like that as well. But actually reading into it, the other key reason was rhubarb needs quite a lot of fertilizer, and it needs kind of warmth,
night soil.
So basically it was all the night soil. So that was all the little outdoor dunnies being emptied every night, and also the mungo and the shod from the mills, all those little bits of fluff that come when you're weaving. So that was also used as well to build those sheds where Bruce are. So they're full of shit and rags, and that's what makes good rhubarb, apparently. Not quite sure they use that these days, but there we go.
I didn't know till Friday, but of course, rhubarb's a vegetable, not a fruit, isn't it? I had no idea.
Yeah,
no idea.
Apparently a lot of
the celery family.
Yeah, it's very medicinal apparently, and of course the leaves are toxic, so you can actually only eat the stalk because the leaves are actually poisonous. There we go. So anyway, so that was another trip, and then another trip. We did very well over the last 2 weeks. We also managed to meet up with Bruce for a very short adjourn in a very wet and cold Scarborough, Scarbados. Although it wasn't particularly Scarbadosy when we were there, and we were slightly late getting there.
Scarbaria.
So Bruce spent about an hour just WhatsApping how dreary and miserable it was. So like he was going to jump off the pier at one point. Anyway, we managed to get there.
Half empty boys, Bruce.
Just in time. And we met in the frigate, which is becoming one of my little regular haunts now. And if you know Scarborough, if you know where the joke shop is, the frigate is across the road. And again, it was open.
Dildos.
The fire wasn't on though, was it? If I remember rightly, Bruce.
No,
it does have a log
in the
burner.
Actually, crazy. I mean, we do wonder about pubs. It was so cold at Scarborough last Monday. It was so wet. And you had this inviting pub, a log burner. He had to get it turned on. You think, for God's sake, and it was the same madness.
What are you drinking there in that middle photograph, Bruce? Looks like a pint of lager.
Oh, well, I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So we had a quick drink in the frigate. Again, nice. It wasn't actually, because it was what day was that, Bruce? Was it a Monday or Tuesday, wasn't it? It was early in the week. So again, it was a limited. I had some of that Yorkshire Theakston's Hacker, which was all right, actually. I probably wouldn't have chosen it, but there wasn't much else on. We then turned left out the frigate and went up the cobbles, and then went into the Leeds Arms. They had their usual Timothy Taylor's Landlord on, but actually I think I was on Ossic Blonde, I think I remember rightly. But Bruce likes it here because, Bruce, it's one of the only places in Yorkshire where you can get a pint of
ABK Berliner beer. Excellent, yes. Yeah. It's delicious. And yet here, the draftsman, the boatmakers out in Keighley, which is a terrible conflict when you go in there. You can't go to the boatmakers and drink it, can you? So I do have it in the draftsman and here. I'm also told Walker's Bar of it in York, but it's not very nice. But I do love that ABK stuff. I've just come this weekend that Marks and Spencer's, their German beer, that's actually ABK, just rebranded from M&S. But it is delicious. I mean, it's proper important.
Who's it made by? Heineken?
No, it's 300 years old, isn't it?
It's a proper job. Yeah, we have a couple places around us that do it, and must admit, if I'm still never go to the Carlton, which is a bit kind of clubby, it's what I would drink in there. I think they have bloody Atlantic on instead, but no, it is the real McCoynick. It's imported German beer, and it is quite nice. And then we went to a new pub that none of us have ever been to, which again is a bit of a thing because it's on the main drag down to the beach from the town. And interestingly, in Scarborough, I never really. I don't know. I never felt there was. There's two pubs about halfway down. What is it? It's Sand Street. What's called that street? Not Beach Street. Is it Sands Road or something? Sandside.
Sandside.
One pub which serves macro lagers, has always got Ulster flags outside of it, and actually outside the front of the pub, actually has got an actual mural of a march. What is it? Is it eighth, whatever it is?
Orange Order.
An Orange Order march.
Rangers pub.
And you often see lots of people in Rangers tops hanging out the front of it. And almost look across the road is the complete opposite. A pub full of shamrocks and Gaelic and everything else, which is called the Merchant. And it's been a bit hit and miss over the last few years, but it's had fairly recently had a bit of an upgrade. So we went in there. And I've got to say, we had some flaming leprechauns as well as the Guinness. Yeah. And I've got to say, the Guinness wasn't actually too bad. And definitely worth going into. So yeah, interesting.
All it was like candles on the tables, a few bit gappy in places where they need a bit of extra, maybe a sofa gap, a few candles. And again, it was a bitterly cold day, and they had 4 people sat in front of the fire they installed. They waited till gone, and they turned it on. And again, the place just was cold. And we had Michael Nick's mum with us. As many families would take an elderly relative. She'd have a cup of coffee. You think, well, for Christ's sake, and sometimes you think you have no sympathy with these people. You think, what would it kill you to have a little cafetiere there, pennies a day? Pretty good.
If you know the little ginnels of Scarborough, I'm going to be on YouTube, you can see us going down those little ginnels. These 3 pubs are literally within about 3 minutes of each other. So again, it was quite a nice little mini crawl around we go. Yeah. Right, we're going to run out of time in a minute, all for the first half, so we will shortly have a short break. Nicholas, you better tell us what you're drinking.
Exactly.
I'm saving
I'm only
myself.
one drinking again.
I'm saving
it's very
myself
nice.
Today.
I think it's the first time I've tried it. I like Adam's Ghost Ship. This is actually a double ghost IPA, and it's full of tropical fruit. The initial nose was, oh wow, it's like a fruity IPA that you maybe expect with a Jaipur or something like that. But it's not quite as sweet and as sickly as it needs to be. But it's not overly hoppy either. So I can't remember where I picked this one up from. It's a 5.2%. But definitely give it a go if you can see it. Say maybe it's a bit rare because I say it's the first time I've ever seen it. But yeah, it's a double ghost IPA from Adman's, and it's top on. Lovely. Nearly sucked it down. Looks you. That's all I got left.
Yeah, I must admit, I actually had a whole weekend this weekend without 1 drop of alcohol, which was quite amazing as the Six Nations were on, and I watched all 3 games. So I don't know. I just felt we had quite a bit the week before, and I just thought, you know what, we'll have a bit of rest this weekend. And I actually wonder, well, I probably won't, but I do think maybe we might go and do 0 beers one time and see how we get on with 0 beers. See how we get on. Right, I've got to tell you a little bit about Whitby, and then we're going to talk a bit more about fires, and then we're going to just talk a little bit about planning our next little journey, which hopefully will be on the weekend. So we will go off and fill our glasses, and Nicholas probably will stay at the toilet knowing, maybe Bruce definitely will go and nip the loo. And we'll be back shortly in part 2. Right, lovely jubbly. So if you jump on number 2 on that second one.
Yeah, I'll just go to the toilet and refresh my glass.